Have you ever stopped to wonder what is really going on in your head when the pressure's on? We're about to explore a pretty wild idea today, that your mind isn't just some bucket for your thoughts. Nope, it's an actual architecture, one that can literally change its shape. Let's dive in. Okay, so let's start with a question that I think every single one of us has asked ourselves. You're smart, you're totally capable, but then a high-stakes moment hits, and you make a choice that later on you just can't explain. Why does that happen? The first thing we have to get straight is that this is not a character flaw. It's not about you being undisciplined or weak. It's so easy to beat ourselves up, right? To think, if only I was stronger or more focused. But that is completely the wrong way to look at this. So instead of a character problem, the big idea we're digging into here is that it's an architectural problem. These moments of, misjudgment, they're actually the predictable outcome of a simple fact. Your mind isn't just a container, it is a structure that physically changes shape under pressure. So let's get into our first big idea. Your mind has a shape. This concept is called cognitive topology, and it basically says the very structure of your mental space has a direct impact on how you think. This slide right here shows a massive shift in thinking. So the old view, on the left, is that cognitive load is just mental effort, kind of like a tired muscle. But the new view, it's way more radical. It suggests that load isn't just a feeling, it's a physical event. As you can see on the right, it literally deforms the architecture of your mind. It doesn't just challenge your mind, it physically reshapes it. And that brings us to this key term you see here, cognitive topology. Honestly, the best way to get your head around it is to picture your mind as a landscape. On a good day with low stress, it's this wide open field. You can wander around, explore different ideas, no problem. But as that pressure builds, that beautiful field deforms into a steep, treacherous mountain. Your options just disappear, and every single thought becomes a struggle just to stay on the path. Okay, so if our minds can literally bend, what does that process actually look like? How does it happen? Let's break it down. It's this really clear chain reaction, like dominoes falling. It all starts when your cognitive load increases. That's just too much coming in, not enough resources to handle it. That pressure then forces your mental space to narrow, kind of like an open field collapsing into a tight canyon. And with less room to move, your interpretations get super rigid. Suddenly, there's only one obvious way forward. And the result of that rigidity? Bias emerges, not as a mistake, but as the only logical conclusion. And this quote just brilliantly captures the experience. See, when you're in that distorted state, you have no idea your thinking is biased. Your mental architecture is just generating the most stable, most resource-efficient interpretation it possibly can. So to you, it feels like you're seeing things with perfect clarity. It feels like accuracy. So here's the real game changer. Biases are not just little psychological quirks. They are structural artifacts. Think about it. Anchoring isn't just you getting stuck on a number. It's your mental landscape shrinking around that number. Confirmation bias? That's not stubbornness. It's what happens when you literally lack the mental space to consider other options. These are the predictable outcomes when your mental architecture gets deformed. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. This internal distortion, it's not a private event that just stays inside your head. It is contagious, and it can reshape the dynamics of an entire group of people. This quote forces a pretty radical shift in perspective. When we communicate, we think we're just exchanging ideas, right? But what's really happening is our mental architectures are colliding. Each of us is bringing our own cognitive shape, whether it's stable or strained, wide or narrow, right into the conversation. And these mental architectures, well, they're like radio towers, constantly broadcasting signals. As this table shows, a steepened, overloaded mind, it just radiates urgency and threat and impatience through its tone, its body language, everything. A widened, open mind, it broadcasts openness and curiosity. These aren't just moods, they're direct signals of the underlying mental structure. And here's the critical consequence. We humans, we synchronize. It's just what we do. The architecture of one person becomes the environment for everyone else. So a single steepened mind introduces pressure into the whole group, forcing other people's minds to narrow in response. This creates a really dangerous feedback loop. The scientific term is an autocatalytic loop, but a better way to think of it is like that screeching audio feedback from a microphone. One person's stress signals make other people stressed. Their stress then amplifies the first person's stress, which then bounces back even stronger.
It's exactly why arguments escalate so fast and why team anxiety can feel like a runaway train. The process is structural, it's not personal.
Okay, so if distortion is a structural trap, how in the world do we escape? Well, thankfully, the answer lies in the exact same principle. Recovery is also a structural process. So, let's look at how we can rebuild that coherence. The recovery process is like hitting the rewind button on distortion. It's a perfect mirror image. It all starts with decreasing the load. You have to lower the pressure. That's step one, non-negotiable. That allows your cognitive space to widen out again, to give you room to breathe. And once that space is back, flexibility returns all on its own. You don't have to force it. The key thing here is that recovery doesn't start with some brilliant idea. It starts with simply reducing the load. Now, this is so crucial. You don't need to think positive to recover. In fact, that could sometimes make things worse. What a destabilized mind really needs is continuity, a stable, predictable environment that lets its internal models get back in sync. A calm, predictable rhythm is way more healing than forced optimism. So let's just quickly summarize how this works. Recovery isn't about willpower. It's about creating the right conditions. And just like one stressed mind can infect a group, a single, stable mind, one that's providing that continuity we just talked about, can create a grounding field for others. And remember, flexibility isn't goal, it's the result of a stabilized structure. Okay, so let's pull back for the big picture. This entire cycle of distortion and recovery, it actually suggests a completely new way of thinking about intelligence itself. This new model is called structural intelligence, and it redefines intelligence away from just raw processing power or how many facts you know. Instead, it's all about the resilience and adaptability of your cognitive architecture. It's the ability to bend under pressure without shattering and then to snap back into shape efficiently. And this might be the most empowering takeaway of the whole thing. That moment of distortion, that bad decision you made, it is not a failure of intelligence. It is intelligence working overtime. It is the sign of a mind desperately adapting its entire structure just to stay coherent against impossible odds. So, let's just recap the journey we've been on. We've seen that our mind is an architecture, not a bucket, that distortion is an adaptive response to pressure, that this state is contagious, but that recovery is possible by structurally widening our cognitive space, and that being able to navigate this entire cycle is, in itself, a profound form of intelligence. And this leaves us with a powerful final question. If bad decisions come from a deformed architecture, not a flawed person, how does that change, well, everything? How can we start designing our workplaces, our tools, our social systems, not just to be efficient, but to be structurally intelligent, to actually help our minds maintain their shape when it matters most? That's the real challenge this idea leaves us with.